Hi friends, hope you are doing well. Today I am going to discuss the important issue about how being an Asian American can impact your prospects in terms of admissions to top university, in terms of getting job, etc. if you are based in the United States. So as many of you know, in the United States, if you apply to universities, if you apply to jobs, you often have to fill up certain forms which identify your race. So you need to fill in whether you are white, whether you are black, whether you are Latino, whether you are Asian American, and so on. Now in this case, what happens is that many of the institutions are trying to fulfill certain diversity criteria, and they want to ensure that the groups of the different segments of the population are well represented in the university or the corporate or the government system. So this is essentially something which is known as affirmative action. So I've made a video on affirmative action before. If you are not familiar with this concept, I will leave this video in the end screen. So I'm going to divide this topic into 5 parts, and this is very important because the nomenclature itself is very doubtful, and there are many aspects which affect the life of people who are of Asian descent. So essentially these are all people who are coming from the Asian subcontinent. So let's begin. Now the number one issue which of course you can start thinking of if you are an Asian is that are Indians Asian? And this is something which crops up every now and then. So when Rishi Sunak became the Prime Minister of UK, several people were saying that an Asian has become the Prime Minister of UK. In UK, it is pretty common to lump the people from the Indian subcontinent into the Asian category, and also describe the people who are essentially from the eastern part of the Asian continent as Asian also. And in the US, this is also the situation. So what happens, whether you are from India, whether you are from China, Japan, Korea, Philippines, Taiwan, or Iran, or any of the West Asian countries, you are going to be lumped into this Asian category because you are essentially coming from this part of the continent. So you may be somebody from Kazakhstan, you may be from Maldives, you may be from Indonesia, you may be from Mongolia, but you are essentially described as an Asian. Now, if we think about the general connotation of this word, most people think that Asian means people from the eastern part of Asia, that is the East Asian region. So essentially the people of China, Korea, Vietnam, Japan, and some of these parts of the world, even Thailand, Philippines, and Indonesia to some extent, the people look similar. So it is difficult for people to actually figure out who is a Japanese, who is a Korean, who is a Chinese, at least for people who are not coming from the Asian subcontinent, or I should say the East Asian part of the world. So what happens is that these people are generally classified as Asian, and in the US system, the people who are coming from the South Asian region, that is India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, Maldives, are also considered to be Asian. So this of course is a complex issue because all these people have different backgrounds, different problems, different levels of elitism when they come to US. So it is very difficult to actually consider these things. So that's the first conundrum about the Asian American community, is the people of South Asia, the people of West Asia, the people of East Asia are all being clustered into one group, and the same laws are being applied to them as far as various decisions on admission, promotion, recruitment are concerned. Now the number two issue is the difference in the achievement status of these different Asian groups. So as I mentioned before, many of the Asian groups which have come to the United States, especially in the last 20-30 years, they essentially have a high degree of attainment in terms of educational qualification and sometimes even the money they bring to the table. So what happened is that people who immigrated from India and China in the recent years, they tend to be college graduates. This is required if they want to get the H-1B visa, and then they later become citizens and their children stay on in this country, and they are all being classified as Asians. So if we look at certain different people who are coming from this part of the world, then we can look at, for example, Filipinos, people from Cambodia, Thailand, Indonesia, and especially some people such as the Hmong and so on. These people are often not so well endowed in terms of the education level of their parents and in terms of the money their parents earned when they are in the US. So again, these people are at a relative disadvantage with respect to the other Asian communities, including the Iranians, the Koreans, the Japanese, who tend to be very wealthy. So all these people are essentially being clustered into the same group and the same laws are being applied to them. So this is one more problem with this particular nomenclature. Now let's look at number 3, and this is somewhat contentious issue, and this is what is the reason why the Asians sometimes can face discrimination in the US. Now I would classify this as basically two aspects. One is the basic problem in US is that many times people look at people from the color prism. So in that case, what happens, the minorities which are colored in some sense are going to face some level of discrimination from people who do not like such people. So again, the people from the Indian subcontinent are often subject to some of this kind of bias. And if we look at the East Asian part of the world, then people from here are subject to what I would call the look problem. Again, there are people who do not like the looks of some of the people from East Asia. So there is some bias based on that. Now, it's of course that these biases are different. They are unfortunately there in people because they have a different way of viewing the world. Many people do not like diversity. They want to hang around with people of their own type, and so that is one of the source of this kind of bias. Now the fourth issue is that of model minority and stereotyping. So many of the Asian communities which have come to US essentially focused on STEM courses. They put in a lot of work in education. They often got good grades in class. So there are many Asians who are all A grade students. They do very well in exams such as SAT, ACT, GRE, GMAT, and so on. And many of them go on and become doctors, engineers, computer scientists, and are in various fields. So unfortunately or fortunately, there has become a reputation now that these Asians are all very intelligent, but also the negative part is that they are very nerdy, they are very insular, they only study, they are very one-dimensional. Some people call them unit vectors, and all these different ways of casting doubts about the other qualities of Asians has become widespread. So generally it is felt that Asians are lone ranger researchers, they are not good at management, they are not good at teamwork, and sometimes it is felt that they may not be good in leadership positions. So again, this is both the positive and the negative side of the Asian American stereotype. Finally, I would say the fifth point is the issues about religion and intersectionality. So essentially we will see that the different Asian communities face different problems in US based on their religion. So if somebody is a Korean Christian, then it's much easier for him in terms of being Christian in US, but he may have to face some problems because of having Korean background and Korean look. If somebody is from the Asian or rather the Indian subcontinent, then there are different religions here. But here color plays a predominant role. If somebody is from the Hindu religion, then again this is a very polytheistic religion, so it is somewhat difficult for these people to explain the polytheism of their religion to the typically monotheistic American population. And sometimes these people are vegetarian, which also creates problem for people, but it is becoming more and more acceptable nowadays that people are vegetarian. I would say if somebody is a Muslim, then there are some issues related to their food. Again, the Muslims who are somewhat rigid, they often want to eat only a certain type of meat, for example the halal food, and therefore what happens is that they often cannot eat out at regular restaurants such as McDonald's or Popeyes or KFC or Taco Bell for that matter, or any general restaurant, because in general most of these restaurants do not serve halal food, so they have to go to either Indian restaurants or Turkish restaurants or Middle Eastern restaurants to essentially get that type of halal food. So the problems of people are different. The concept of intersectionality says that there are sometimes problems which are exacerbated when people have different cases of discrimination lumped together. So it may be that there is some Muslim woman from, let us say, the Maldives, and she is essentially discriminated on various grounds, which may be based on color, which may be based on religion, which may be based on gender. So what happens is that the total level of discrimination she may face may be quite substantial in the US society. Now, these are concepts which social scientists work on. These are highly debatable concepts, because despite the presence of various levels of discrimination, many of these people have done very well. Many of the CEOs and top people in the US are essentially people of Asian descent. These include the CEOs of various Silicon Valley companies and so on. And also you have a large number of Asians who are present in the government systems as well as in universities as professors and so on. So I would say the Asians have done well, but the factor remains that this particular designation of the Asian American can at many points jeopardize the situation of admission of many of these kids. So this is something they have to keep in mind. They often get stereotyped as very nerdy, and so there is some bias against them. You will find a lot of information in YouTube on several people who had very great scores in all the exams, who were 4.0 students and even better, and they were not able to get admission in any of the Ivy League universities. So again, they often blame the fact that they had to tick the Asian box to this particular situation. Now the US Supreme Court is saying that that is not a criteria on which admission should be made, but do remember that when people write letters, when people write statements of purpose, they often mention their background, and the people in the university who look at these issues, they often may consider the background of the student. So they may often think that the Asian person is having a pretty privileged background, but this may always not be the case. It may be that they actually had to struggle a lot. Their parents may have come from disadvantaged situations, and many of them feel even if their parents came into middle class situations, it's they who have worked very hard, and therefore they should get admission and jobs wherever they are qualified to be, and it should not be based on their race or the color of the skin and so on, as the US Constitution generally says that you cannot discriminate based on any of these grounds. So this was my take on this rather complex topic. If you have any feedback on this particular situation, or it has impacted your admission or getting a job in the US, please mention that in the comment section, and I will see you in a video sometime soon. See you then.